Hey guys, happy Sunday. Um, Welcome to the exclusive live for Bloom patrons and Creative Fabrica fans. Hope you guys are excited for today. Let me know in the comments who's here so I can say hi. And really quickly, I'm going to walk through what we're doing today and we'll go from there. So, this is something I had painted last year, inspired by the inspired from, I should say, the Flower Color Theory book, which is right there. Anyways, and this was done on the Stonehenge Legion 600 GSM paper. So I figured let's try something loose, kind of like this, using the Stonehenge 600 GSM. Let me just make sure my brightness isn't crazy bright so then you guys can see better. And yeah, so we'll sort of do something like this, but we're gonna keep with the whole wet on wet series that I've been doing. Well, obviously, because this is also wet on wet, but I want us to get as much practice as we can so we can get better and get a little more in tune with what we are learning. Oh, there were two people viewing. Oh, hi Jill. Are you still here? Because now it says we recommend that you. Are you guys having issues, or can you hear me? Can you see me? Let me know in the comments, please. Says everything is excellent condition. I just want to make sure before I start that everyone is here and you're able to see things properly. So let me know in the chat, guys. I just want to make doubly sure that we're good before I start. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just slice out this sheet from the block in the meantime. Okay, fabulous. Great. Today I would like to use, so we're using the same techniques we've been going through all these weeks, but I want to use my Supervision colors. This is the same set of colors that I used for this past week's video, swatching and reviewing Supervision granulating or layered colors versus the White Nights granulating colors. And I also used this for my Instagram live to do that little scenic view that I had done. So here we are going to explore using this for loose flowers or loose florals, and let's see what we get. I did do something roughly over here, but honestly it was just to use up the color. I didn't really put too much thought into it. I just sort of painted just to sort of get a feel for how it would look. So today we get to explore being a little more intentional in what we're painting, or I get that, depending on if you guys have those colors or you're using other colors. So I'm going to put this aside and let's walk through the colors I'm using really quickly as well. Here's my sheet of paper. Make sure there's no hindrance. I'm going to use Patti's palette over here just because I've got some of these colors on here already. And let's see what else. I want to make sure everything is ready before we begin. So like I mentioned, we're going to keep it loose and fun and just allow the colors to sort of blend and mix and give us some nice effects. So I really like the idea of using, because you guys know I love my pink, so I'm going to I'm gonna go with my favorites. So I think I will do the Rubia Purple, and Rubia Purple, definitely golden brown, because I feel like the contrast would be fabulous. I love that blue brown as well, so those three for sure. And then possibly get in some midnight blue, maybe. I want to say midnight blue. Yeah. Oh, midnight moon, sorry. Okay, so let's just get started. So I'm gonna get some colors mixed up really quickly. I have a organized method here, so I know exactly what colors are where. So I started off with the blue orange over there. So this is the blue brown. And I said we're going to use some of the blue brown. I think this is a beautiful tealish brown, and it would go fabulous for leaves. So I'm going to use that for my leaves. If you're using regular watercolors, which most of you probably are, I would suggest maybe adding a little brown to like an emerald or like a tealish green if you have one. Jill, what size paper? I am using, I believe this is 9 by 12. Yes, this is a 9 by 12 sheet of paper today, so it's going bigger, grander for us. And Rubia Purple. Now this is also, I think this would be a great color for like roses or like bigger blooms, maybe even like peonies. So I know Dolores is here. Hi, Dolores. So it seems like it's just the two of you, unless there are people watching it from the Patreon website itself. Because I think then I'm not able to see how many people are watching. I can't quite remember. Here we go, golden brown. So for golden brown, I don't know, maybe use some yellow ochre mixed in with a little bit of cadmium orange. Yeah. And then Westlake, which is like that pinky blue. So we'll have our main big bloom in the purple. We'll use the blue for smaller flowers. And I said one more color. What did I say? Devil's Kiss. Okay, so that is over here. So Devil's Kiss, and that would be on my palette. Okay, so here, Devil's Kiss is right here. There's a method to my madness. Okay, for brushes, here we go. Now that I have colors down here. For brushes, I'm going to use, I still can't find my number 4, by the way. Kind of frustrating, but whatever, it's fine. We'll just go with the flow for today. I'm going to keep my flat brush handy just in case I want to do a little bit of dampening, which I think it would be nice to do, and then go in with the color. That's what I had done in that's what I had done over here, and got that beautiful sort of gloomy effect here. So I might, putting that aside, I've got my number 8. I'm also going to bring out the number 8 Princeton Velvetouch. Dolores, I always want to buy the new colors you promote, but if you could see just how many different sets of paints I have now, you would be shocked. Some I haven't even used. I didn't even know. See, you need to reach out to me, Dolores, and mention which ones you haven't used, and if it's any of the ones that I have sort of spoken about, because there's so many colors I still want to use, and that's why I started off this month's like the year off with using just the Paul Rubens for such a long period of time. because I figured people need to be able to get to know the colors really well before moving on. So that was my thought process. I definitely want to use the Paul Rubens Gukai colors too, the ones that came in tubes. And so with these granulating colors, I believe I'm going to use them for a couple of sessions again, because I really love the duotone effect that they have going on. It's just something very different. I also don't see a lot of people using the Supervision colors. They're using a ton of the other variations out there. I think Schmink does them too. Daniel Smith has them as well. So, and I really like these colors. So I figured we could probably experiment and get some nice startling effects. But yes, please message me and tell me which ones you have, and I'm happy to do videos using those. So then this way you're encouraged to use the ones you have. Okay, so next brush I want to have here is the round number 2 for our nice thin strokes, and I will I'll keep the angular brush handy as well, just in case. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brushes. Okay. I don't have a, actually, you know what? I want to have a number 6 just in case. But again, I cannot find my number 6. I don't know where it is. You know what? Leave it. Let's leave the number 6. Okay, let's begin. After all of that. So I told you about my paper, colors, what we're doing, and we are good to go. So here we go. Let's dampen a little bit of the sheet here. Now this is 600 GSM, so it's super thick, and the thickness is almost like a cardboard, if I could compare it to that. So I am going to dampen it first, then mix my colors, and then we'll start painting. I'm going to dampen it around here in the middle, and what I'm going to do is, instead of just brushing the water on, I'm going to use this brush to sort of create little strokes that almost kind of mimic like I'm painting a rose or something like that. So if you want to mimic, I don't know, painting leaves maybe, sure. The idea is to just get certain areas damp, not the whole area. Leave a little bit of white space in between, and then we go ahead and paint on it, just to sort of get some blooming slash straight edged effects once we actually start putting in our paint. So just like around this area here, the midsection is where I'm adding this color, and sorry, not color, water. And now let's go in with the Velvetouch number 8, and I'm going to start off with using the, what was it, Rubia Purple. Yes. So I'm going to get some of that rich color mixed up over here. And let's start off with doing our first flower, because we've got this area nice and damp. Let's make the first flower more of a rose. So using the tip of my brush, we're going to do those tiny little C strokes. From the center, right? And then just pressing down to kind of really get thicker, more blooming strokes in. What I'm going to do is just lighten this even more so you can see more clear version of what I'm doing. Adding more color to the center just to kind of enhance the darkness. And then using a little bit more water on my brush, so dipping it in water, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. So I want like a lighter version of this purple that we're using. Notice how I'm holding my brush, like I'm holding it like a quarter way up. So we've done that, and I want to use the same, so this is damp, so I'm going to use this, the second purple that I have. And I can see most of this has dried up. So I'm going to go back with this brush and just sort of add more strokes here just to sort of liven this area some more. And we'll start off with doing, so this rose is kind of facing this way. I'll do this one facing, I'll do this flower facing down sort of to the side. But before I do that, I just want to add this darker purple just in the center. I want to see what sort of effect or result does it give me once it's dried out, just because they are two different purples. They've got those two different tones, underlining tones. Smoothing out the edge here. All right, so here we go for this flower. So this purple one is going this way, so I did say more of a rose, so let's do the little C strokes right here. But I want to leave like that, the top portion of this rose open, kind of like really leaving it loose and not too focused on the detail. And I can see that brown kind of just emerging from it. I'm just adding more color, or trying to, with this too much water on my brush here, so it didn't quite pan out the way I wanted it to. Here we go. I'm just like deliberately adding this here because that area is damp and I want to get a bloom happening in there. So washing off most of the color with more water, less color on my brush. I'm just sort of going to give this a more raggedy sort of blooming effect. And let's hone in a little bit more on the center. So I'm not waiting for it to dry fully before I'm going in and just adding a little bit more of a darker tone to certain areas over here to sort of really highlight and lift the layers of my rose. And really, like, you would use this technique for any of the other flowers you'd be like doing as well. So just keep that in mind. I'm trying to adding some watermarks over here, trying to drag in some of that color to give it some interesting layers. So all I'm doing is like literally laying down some color and some water strokes and then going in and trying to intensify the layers and sort of lift things up a little bit. Just to kind of add some depth, give it some pop, so to speak. Now this one's sort of dried and it seems a little bit extra blotchy in the sense like it looks like there's a lot of thick color happening with not a lot of white space. So I'm just gonna, I've washed off the color from my brush and I'm just lightly taking the number 8 And I'm going to try and swipe off some color just to give it some nice lights and darks within, leading up into the center here. I'm going to do a little bit of that over here too. Swiping off. We don't do a lot of swiping off in most of my paintings, but I want to get us used to doing that because it is such an important and useful technique to use in times when you've either used too much water or too much color, or you find like you've lost a lot of your white space because you've just ended up making a big blob of color on there maybe. So yeah, let's get used to that. Okay, so now I want to end off with doing a little bit of a splatter. So I'm going to take that first color that I had, using the number 8 again, and I'm just going to do splatter here. And to the bottom of this. Okay, so I love how this has turned out so far. Any comments from you guys? Have you guys gone rogue? Dolores, I'm going to assume that you're just watching for now, and you're going to probably paint this later because you've always mentioned that's your preference. Jill, what about you? Comment and holler, let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to use my number 8, and we're going to get some of the golden brown activated here. And for this, I think we'll do more of the delphinium style flowers, maybe. Second rose is a blob. Okay, you got to do a third then, just because, you know, try and keep that, the top portion of the rose open, not like how we closed it there. So then that helps with unblobbing it a bit, if that's a word. Also, you know what? I'm not going to believe you, Jill, because every time you post, I'm like, wow, that turned out amazing. And meanwhile, over the live, you're like, oh, I messed up. Oh, I did this. So, okay, good, Dolores. I'm glad you're making the attempt to paint along. It helps sometimes. Just change it up a bit. You never know. Also, while you're painting right now, and since we're doing a live, like, this is your opportunity to ask questions, so I can always respond if you're having any issues. Okay, so I've got some of that orangey golden color here. This area is damp here, and this area is also damp, and I can see that it's getting a little bit darker, so I'm going to brighten the camera. So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it's a little bit damp, and we're going to do a little bit of painting on there. But first, what I want to do is, actually, yeah, let's do the paint first, and then I can go in with the second brush and add water. So here we go, like the delphinium style, but this one we don't have a lot of space, so I'm just going to do a little bit here. So just doing, like, pressing down and getting some color on there. I'm literally just doing like little strokes to sort of give you that impression of like several flowers happening there. I'm going to do the same thing on here. This area is nice and damp, so I'm going to sort of deliberately touch that area to get that purple bleeding into this. And let's sort of have it trailing a little bit down here, not too much. Then going in with the number 8 and just water on it, we're going to go ahead and try and enhance, adding a couple more strokes around these strokes. And what this is going to do is it's going to give it a softer edge. And because you're not using any color on your brush, you're going to get like that nice gradient effect. And I'm excited to use this technique with these colors, mainly because yeah, because they've got that two-tone effect happening in here. So I think it'll give us some very interesting results. So honestly, I'm not even trying to paint a flower. I'm just using the full span of the brush and I'm adding these blobs of color, kind of trying to formulate that shape of a delphinium, or what are the other flowers that sort of look like delphiniums? There's a couple. Just kind of that cone-shaped cluster of flowers is what we're going for. So you want to do like the most prominent versions or shapes at the bottom, and then you're kind of ghosting as you go in a triangular fashion upward. So what I did here was add some color, or add some water first, and then I went in with this brush that has the color, and I'm adding more color here just to sort of intensify the depth. And what you can also do is, if you're fidgeting with the color using the brush that only has water, like your second brush, you can sort of swipe up some color and disperse it around. You want to give it that faded, dark to light, but also large shapes to small shapes, and then, you know, more widely spread. Yeah, so something like that. Okay, so now I'm going to use the number 2. Let's use the number 2, and we'll get some of the green that we have, that I've saved up here. What was it? Like that tealish brown color that I have mixed. So I want it to be about 70-30. So I want it to be dark, but not too dark. So I'm just adding, making sure that it's mixed to the consistency that I want. And then again, taking advantage of the fact that this area is still damp, we're going to lightly go in and add, using the tip of our brush, just adding little connecting strokes to in between the flowers here. And then I'm doing that here too. I love this part just because while the flowers are still damp, just to see that little bit of green emerging from in between and giving it that little bit of a bloom with the flower color really is quite satisfying to see. Okay, I want to do a little bit of a almost like buds happening at the top, or you could just make them leaves. I'll leave that up to you. But just adding a little bit of additional greenery at the tips of these guys. I'll do one here. So you can see how I'm just doing very light little, you could call them mini leaves, just kind of attaching them. This one I'm going to give a little bit of a curve here and then add them to the edge. Can you see that? I'm sure you guys can see that. And then adding a little bit more here. I'm just fluffing this edge here a little bit just to sort of disperse that green out evenly. Okay, so now that we've done that, actually we can take some of that green and do a little bit of a splatter using this number 2. And I'm actually dipping my brush in water just to get a lighter looking green for my splatter. There we go. Okay, so we've got all this happening. What other colors do we have? Okay, we've got some green. We need to do a little bit more of the some leaves. So I'm going to use the number 8 Velvetouch. And actually, let's get a little bit, what's it called? Adventurous, that's the word. And let's use the angular brush for leaves. Of course, if you don't have the angular brush, just use a regular brush that you have, the regular round. And I will use for leaves, let's see, because I only have that one color. Let's use the same color for leaves. I'm going to use it all up. And let's create some leaves that are thin and long. I think the angular brush is great for things like that. So let's not try and do anything too crazy, but here we go. I've mixed up the color, and I'll have this be more of a 60-40 mix, and that's mainly so that when these leaves dry up, they're not the darkest. And then this way, if we feel the need to go over with a second green and sort of intensify, give it a little bit more pop, we can. So I'm going to use the tip of my angular brush, and we'll start off with doing a leaf right here. So I'm extending and then painting in a stem, you could say. And then using the tip again, what I'm going to do is this. Press down and lead towards the stem. And then just intensify the pointed area of your leaf, of my leaf, because this is how it's turned out. And then pushing all the color downward. And then dipping the tip of my brush in water, I'm going to do another leaf. This time I started with the tip from the bottom, and I kind of extended it outward. And then just did a third one here. So the whole point of adding a second leaf here, I tried to make it more water, but you can see the color kind of just went in there, so we've got a lot of color. So I'm just washing off most of the color from my brush. And I want to extend because I want there to be not just one solid looking sort of section of leafy color. I want there to be different variations of green, so it gives you that whole impression that there's a lot happening. So I'm using water and I'm just sort of lightly extending to get some loosey looking leaves ghosting almost in the background. And it's, yeah, I'm gonna show it to you if you can't see it very clearly right now, but it's got some beautiful, like we've got some dark brownish green, and then the water that I've used to extend and pull from the color here is giving me this light blue, yeah, glaze almost, you could call it, which is very pretty. So I'm going to do some over here. I want to give it more movement happening, so I'm going to do a couple coming from here. But I don't want to overpower these guys here, so I'm just going to do, I've done 2 dark ones, now I'm using the water on my brush, and I'm just going to extend to sort of lighten these ones that I have. So drawing the color from the leaves that I've just added and just extending. Good enough. And so we've got 1, 2, and I'll just do a couple here. And this will go swirling sideways. Again, this green is, or this blue brown is just gorgeous. I think even if we did like eucalyptus leaves, I think that would be, this is perfect for eucalyptus leaves. I don't want to overdo that. And you could even do just a couple, like peeking out from here. Just kind of lightly fluffing using this color. So you can see movement, like I'm trying to have some go up there, some directionally over here, giving it a little bit of curve. This came out a little bit straighter, but again, I added that little swoosh at the top, hoping that it adds a little bit more movement. And what I'm doing is just, I've taken more water on my brush, and I'm going to do something like that. So again, lighter and giving it a little bit of direction. So pulling it along, giving it more movement, but on a lighter scale, so it doesn't overpower the whole, these guys over here, because I still want these to be the longest attention grabbing things that we have there. Okay, so moving on. So this is great. I want to add those blue flowers, and I think then we can take a step back and just observe what we have. So the blue that I have was that nice blue with the pink happening in it. And let's continue to use our angular brush for that. So let's get some interesting flowers for it. So these can be your basic 5-petal flowers, really. Nothing over the top. And let's try and manage our sizing for these flowers. So let's try and get it to be a little smaller in size so that they don't overpower our yellow delphinium style flowers. So again, we could do these in 2 different ways. We could either dampen the area where we want to have these flowers and then go in with the blue, or we could just go in with this and then using a second brush lighten the area. So the dampening the area first and then going into paint, remember we did that. We didn't do that, but I did a reel which was like this, and I had posted it on the Patreon Facebook page, the slow version. So you guys have that to refer to. I'm not sure if you did or didn't, but it'll give you this effect. So if you go in first, dampen it, and then do your petals, it'll give you that bloom. And then you wait for it to dry a little bit, and then you can go in and add in your details, which is also very nice. So we could do that bleeding effect. Let's try it. Why not? And then I think I would like to do where is it? Let me see if I have it. Using a sharp edge of something, we can add some lines instead of going in with color. Let's try that. So taking this brush, I'm going to go ahead and actually let me just turn on the light too, because I feel like he's getting a little bit dark, right? Let's tone this down a bit here. Okay, so dampening. Let us dampen this area here. So making sure I'm not touching the rose, because if I go in with my blue, then it's going to seep into the rose, and I don't really want that. Dampen most of this area so then it can maybe give us a feathering blue effect. Let's see. Okay, pulling this down a tad, and here we go. Just turn so the blue is facing here. So I'm going to use the tip of my brush to create these petals. So let's do a big one over here. So kind of like how I did the leaves, except I'm going around in a circle to create this, and I'm leaving white space in between. So there's one. I was hoping for more of a flare, so maybe the paper is not as damp as I thought it was. I'm just going to dampen it some more. Touched a little bit of that edge there. Making sure that I have more water and less color on here. Go ahead and paint using the tip of this, just going around and getting like petals all around. The key when you're painting like this is to make sure you've got enough white space in between. Why? because while this is damp and if the color is sort of moving around, it might end up closing up entirely and then you get a blob. See that? Anyway, so what I'm going to do is add more water here to have this bleed out, because this blue has that really pretty pink after effect. And I think just having the pink seep out would be very pretty. And I can see some of that happening already. Pink or purple, I don't know, whatever it is called. So I'm just going to do like random little petals here. In between. And then I'm going to feather off by doing on a lighter scale, just adding little dots. Kind of indicate like there's background versions of this happening. Okay, I'm going to let that dry a little bit and let's add the blue just in one more area. Let's add it in a little bit at the bottom. I don't want to close up this beautiful open rose, so I'm just thinking, maybe just over here to the side. So then we've got that diagonal, we've got these diagonal, and then I think that should be enough. We'll have a little bit maybe peeking out from here. I just want to lightly dab some of this color, because as I step back to look, we did say we would go smaller in our location for these flowers, and they're kind of suddenly really popping. It happens. Okay, here we go. I'm going to dampen this area. I know I've got a little bit of a splatter happening here, so I'm just sporadically adding this around. And I'm going to make sure that my blue is more, like watered down some more. And we'll just do it in that area. So we'll probably get like one flower, maybe two. So here we go. I've got a lot of color on my brush, sorry, water on my brush, and then I'm dipping to get the color. And so you can see how it's a lot lighter in comparison to the flowers we have at the top, which is great. Don't want it to be overpowering in this area as well as that. That would be too much. But you see how light it is here. That's more the vibe I was going for. Let's do one more, a little bit spaced out from the other two. It's great. Before this, the one at the top dries up fully, I want to do the scraping a little bit. But where is my, can't seem to find my my small little ruler. Okay, we can use the back of the brush. That's okay. Here we go. Oh, it's not as thin, the back of the brush. But we want to just add, like press in and really drag and add some texture into these flowers. Same thing here. And these ones are very light, and they're damp too, so that's great. Now the back of this brush is giving me thicker strokes. That's why the tip of my scale would have been really good. Let me see if I can lighten this so you can see a little bit more texture. Yeah, I think you can see some of the texture. Okay, so last but not least, so we finished those guys. Let's add some green in between this, and then for this greenery, I think it would be nice to add a different variation of green. So let's use I'm going to use the red navy. That looks to be the darkest. Everything else has a lot of purple in it, and I don't want to overdo with the purple. This is too bright, so is this. So the red navy seems to be the best option to use. There is a green violet, but again, it looks too much like the blue, and our blue is really popping right now. So red navy, it is. Make sure I'm getting it from the right spot. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's right here. Okay. Oh, actually, I've got enough red navy on my palette already. There it is right there. So it's actually like it's like a grayish color, greenish gray, and then it's got red undertones. And I'm using the number 2 for this one. So I've noticed the best thing to do with colors like this, especially when they've got the two-tone stuff happening, is to really water them down, because if you get too much of a thick layer going on, it just looks like a dark color. You don't quite see that beautiful blend with that second tone happening. And here's what I mean by that. Oops. Dropped. Here's the red, what was it? Red navy. Yes, here's the red navy. But it just looks like a dark blob. But there's certain areas here that I've done with more water, and you can see that beautiful red shining through in comparison to this, which just makes it look like a dark brown or like black even. So here we go, watered down to the best of my capabilities using my number 2. And let's start at the bottom because it's closest to me. I'm just using the tip of my brush to do some of these little strokes, connecting the flowers first, then dipping the tip of my brush in water because I mentioned I want them to be lighter. I'm going to extend and do some cute little leaves. I don't want to overpower the leaves happening here, but I do want to add some nice darker tones to this side so it isn't as bright. And by darker tones, I mean just adding more leafy action here. And again, if you want to give your painting some direction, here's one way of doing it by just adding stems that are slightly longer and giving it a little bit of movement, so to speak, with your leaves. And I'm just trying to add a couple of blobs of color in between our flowers here to tighten up the look. Let's see how that dries up. I'm gonna go and fixate on the top there for a little bit, and so I'm gonna turn my sheet over like this, and let's get some leaves happening here. Again, for these leaves, you want to go a little looser in your painting just so that it doesn't look as prominent as these ones. You can have some leaves sort of peeking out from in between the flowers here. That I think will also help lessen the brightness that's happening with the blue. Adding some of that green in between the rose and these flowers too, just a little bit to kind of show where the border is. And then I'm trying to make the leaves that are extending on these stems outward a little more shaky. So again, trying to keep it looser looking. So that's why I'm holding my brush almost towards the end here. That became too big, so I'm just gonna take a paper towel and just dab because I don't want it to dry up too prominent. So next best thing to do is just take a paper towel and dab. And I think that is it for this area at the top. Oh, I'll do one more thing actually. Using the same dark color that we have, this reddish, grayish color. So just using the number 2, getting some of it on the tip of my brush. So more color, less water. I'm going to do a little bit of a center for these flowers just so, again, there's a little bit of a break in how bright they are. So using the tip, lightly grazing to create these little lines. Or you could even do polka dots, so dots, in other words. Just breaking up the bright blue a little bit. Notice I am kind of leaving a little bit of space in between as I'm going around creating this circle with the dots. Oh, sorry, with the lines. I'm doing lines. So the circle can be broken. It doesn't have to be like one closed up circle. This also helps. Doing something like this also helps if you realize you don't have too much white space in between your flowers or your petals. Now these are light and all kind of look like they're facing downward, so they don't need too much of that detail. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of a touch up there. Shorter lines, not as much detail. I think you can see that, yeah. Okay, so I'm serving it, and I like how this is looking. I want to do one more thing, and that is using the same color we just used for this. I'm going to take some of that using my number 8, and I want to add a couple of leaves in between the flower, the two roses that we have, and just break that up a bit. And then I think I should be okay. But I'm going to start off small because I don't want it to be something I'm not happy with later on. So let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to think how to paint this in. So I think if I do, we've got leaves happening over there. So if I do a leaf happening sort of this way, so it looks like it's sort of coming from in between. That's breaking it up nicely. And just darkening it by adding a little bit more color, just so it looks like it's more prominent. And then adding another one here. So that kind of breaks it up quite nicely. I like it. I'll do one peeking out, overlapping on this rose here, just on this edge. Again, trying to break it up, trying to add a little more contrast into this composition here. And in fact, here's what I'm going to do. Take the number 2 and just draw out, like taking some color from here and just painting out like looser looking leaves and leaving them open-ended so it looks like there's stuff. And so this is now, we're getting into a little bit of wet on dry sort of techniques. Very interesting. Never really done this before, so this is quite interesting here. So I've kind of extended from that just to sort of give it lighter looking leaves. And then I drew in a couple more of the stems. I'll do the same thing here, except I'm just going to make another leaf. Make it look like there's another leaf coming out from this one. Just adding strokes to sort of indicate that there's more leafy detail, really. That's it. Okay, I love it, and now I feel like it needs to have a little bit more of this happening somewhere else. So I'll add it in one more spot, and then I think we should not touch it anymore. So I think this blue flower here at the top is a little bit too dark. So it might be nice to sort of do this over this. And I'm just hugging the edge of that rose petal here. And because we've got a lot of detail happening on this area already, I'm not going to do too much of the smoothing out and whatnot. I'm just adding some darker shapes indicating leaves and leave it. Yeah. Yeah, okay. And 1, 2, 3, and I want to do one more here. I have a little bit of that color here. So it's just me at this point trying to disperse the color and create a little bit of that contrast in a couple of places in varying levels. And by varying levels, I mean like these are smaller, these are bigger here. We've got some smoothed out versions of that in there too. I just want there to be pops of color so that it doesn't look random. So this way we've got these leaves repeating in all these areas and they look like they're a part of the big picture, which they are. Okay, and we're at 1:14, so I'm not going to do any more. This is my cue to stop. Okay, now I'm gonna look to the screen. Tell me if you guys had any questions. How did we do? I personally like how this turned out. Let me do a close-up. I just don't know. Are you guys able to see clearly? Are you able to see the detail if I'm pulling it up closer? My battery is dying, so what I'm going to do is I'll post a video on Instagram. But I hope you guys like this. Let me know in the comments, and don't worry, you can do it again, because I also kind of was just going with the flow. Like, these colors are so interesting. I love it. But yeah, I'll post it online and you guys can let me know your comments. And thanks guys for joining. Hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Okay, I'm going to go post now. See ya. Bye.